Well, today, this video, it's almost February 2023, and I am very excited to have an opportunity to interview this guy. His name is Dan Stueve. He is out of the Valley, West LA kind of area. And I met him several years ago when I was asked to do a training program for his company. And he was a team leader at that point in time with a very large office in that area. And I just was very impressed with him. And clearly, his team really was impressed with him because I don't usually see that many people at a sales meeting and or in a training class, and they were all there. It was quite remarkable. And so he impressed me, and I stayed in touch with him since then. We became kind of social media friends, and I reached out to him recently because I've been doing a series, and will continue to do a series around the whole issue of real estate brokerage, real estate new agents, and the whole process of recruiting and how to run a company and what to do and what not to do kind of stuff. So that's what I talk with him about. His beginnings is quite fascinating because he has a uniqueness to the beginnings of his career, and all of which is going to be helpful to any of you that are thinking of actually starting a brokerage or going into the real estate industry and what needs to happen. So I hope you enjoy it. It's really quite interesting. His contact information will be there as always, and enjoy the video. Hey, everybody. I am very excited to introduce to you somebody that I met through an interesting way, a gentleman by the name of Dan Stueve with Equity Union Real Estate up in Sherman Oaks, California. And I'm excited to talk about him because anybody that knows me any length of time realizes that I've been doing this for a long time, and I was in leadership most of my career. And so when I look at that, I always come back to that piece about recruiting. And when I first met this gentleman, we talked about that whole recruiting piece. And I even joked with him, let's have a recruiting contest. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. But that's what he's doing. I've actually had brokers ask me, why do we need to recruit? And I laugh at that because if you don't recruit, you don't have humans selling houses, you don't have money, you don't have a business. And so when I'm in the process of doing these videos, I said, let me talk to this man and talk about the recruiting piece. Why is it important? What are his processes? What does he look for? All that kind of stuff. So Dan, welcome. I'm excited to have you here with me. I love talking to you. It's so funny. You hired me to do a training program, a certification program for your company at that time.
Correct.
And I just instantly fell in love with you. I said, I just love this guy. So,
We're bound to be friends,
now it's wonderful. It's wonderful. We meet friends wherever we are. So Dan, how long have you been in the industry? And tell me if you would share with the group a little bit of your history, if you don't mind.
Sure. So this is actually my 10th year in the biz. August will be 10 years. So very, very proud of that. I did family law for 14 years prior to real estate. I'm a lot older than I look. But yeah, I just literally had a life change. They say you do careers, at least more than one career in a lifetime, and 14 years family law of all types of law is definitely a lot and hard. And I really saw my life kind of change before my eyes, and just to a person I didn't want to be. And one of my best friends, she had cancer and she passed away after 3 years of battling. And I was very close to her, and she was really the first person in my life that I laughed with every day that I lost. And that really just changed my world. So it was a very cliche story of having that moment in life where you know that you're unhappy and you need to change things. And that was that moment. So she actually taught me a lot in that horrible experience. And I don't wish that on anybody to lose someone to cancer. But it literally made me start thinking, what do I want to do? What's gonna make me happy?
Wow.
So,
I love, this is a new thing about you I didn't know. What a powerful story that is, because you were looking in the mirror. So I jokingly say you're a reformed attorney. And you looked and you didn't like who you were becoming. Family law is very, very difficult. You're dealing with massive dynamics. And that, sorry for your loss. I have lost people to cancer, and so I do understand it. Then, okay, this is it. I'm changing my life. I don't want to be that guy anymore. I want to be this guy. So why real estate?
I really didn't even have a passion for anything else. When I was a child, I wanted to be an attorney,
Mm,
a teacher,
mm.
or Robert Boxer, for those of you that are old enough. And not necessarily because of her. I mean, obviously, I thought it was cool having two women senators of California back, when I was young and into politics and all that kind of fun stuff. And politics aside of which, party or whatever, just didn't want to be president, I guess, but wanted the power and the so in leaving law, obviously I was done with that. And unfortunately, we don't pay our teachers enough in our country
Yeah.
for my lifestyle.
Yes, indeed. I understand that.
Definitely important. And the politics is fun, but it's politics, and as we are today, I'm glad I didn't go the politics route either. So literally for having a lack of anything to do, I didn't know. And I told my parents, and they were so happy. They're like, oh, thank God, no attorney, like they hate attorneys. Sorry for all you attorneys out there. And then
I got to tell you this. I actually had a guy that I dated for a while who told me that if had I been an attorney, he wouldn't have dated me.
right, but I had no desire, no passion for anything. And it was really hard for me once I had that turning point in my life to figure out what that was. And I was embarrassed, because attorneys, they're successful. It's a great career. It's reputable, for the most part. Um, but someone that's educated and all that kind of good things. And so without any real passion for anything, it was, what do I do? And so I only told literally maybe my 4 best friends, and all of them just hands down said, you should be a real estate agent. You'd be great at it. You have the personality for it. I'm sure, especially this topic being about recruiting, I'm sure most people have heard that,
Yes, indeed, indeed.
and to me, it was, and no offense to my realtor colleagues, it was like almost a dirty word. It was, it's not the best reputation across the board. A lot of times it's hard to be successful, especially now looking at it and all the fanfare and fluff on television. Everybody thinks it's so easy, and it's not a lot of hard work. And I had a completely different perception of it at that time. And so months went by, 4 months actually, in my deciding what to do. And it was coming very stressful for me. And I just finally, one of my best friends, his partner at the time, he was one of the people that said, get your real estate license, that I didn't, listen to. And he was a casting director.
Ah,
He's casted some pretty great people. And so he said, look, I'm a casting director, and I know the roles that people are born to play, and this is what you were meant to do. So what you have to lose, go
right.
out and try it. If you don't like it, do something else, but go for it. I know you're meant to do this. And for lack of anything else, and maybe the ham that I am, I said, okay. And I went online that night, and I went on Googling real estate schools, and I found Allied Real Estate School.
Absolutely. Good old Allied
Shout
Real
out to
Estate
my
School.
friend Pam Button over there.
I actually took when I came to California, I went to Allied. That's where I got my stuff as well. So funny.
Yeah.
So
So
and then
started
what
that night.
happened?
Started that night. I literally started. I'm more being in law. I'm a paper person. It took me years in real estate to get rid of the papers, and even creating my own like file folders with my clients and everything in it. But I just started studying, and I had them send me the books, but I started online, and I went through the process. I hated the material. It's the driest, worst studying for anything that I've done. And obviously I've gone through, college and law
Yes, you
school and
are. Yes,
LSATs
yes,
and
yeah,
all of that stuff. And
yeah,
it was just horrible.
yeah, yeah.
So I honestly, I feel like I fried my brain in studying for that exam. And thankfully I passed, on my first try.
That's what they all say. Don't you know that? That's it. I passed on my first try.
Right? Because I probably wouldn't be here today. It made me that I just didn't like it. And it's
Yeah.
especially California, like it's probably not PC either, but the meets and bounds and riparian rights and all this other stuff that they make you study for. It's like, I
Yeah.
tell people when I recruit the new licensees, when I recruit them, or people thinking about getting their real estate license, pay attention to the ethics, the agency, the disclosure part, all the rest of it, you're going to forget it. You're not going to need it in real estate.
No, I actually I'm doing a series for new agents on my video, and I just started the first one, and it says, nothing you learn in school is going to tell you nothing. You got nothing other than ethics and agency and stuff like that. And certainly fair housing is something that's increasing. But boy, I'll tell you, it's horrible to go through. And of course, I started in Connecticut in 1986, and there we literally looked at descriptive, the oak tree in the far left corner and the rock over here. Well, 300 years later, the oak tree is dead and the rock has been moved.
Yeah, for sure. This is a career you learn on the job. So it's just get that license, right? And then go from there.
So talk about, you got your license, you passed your test. What did you do then, Dan? Where did you go?
Then I had to find a brokerage.
Exactly.
I actually had to try to do this thing that I had no desire or passion to do, right? So when I looked at my sphere, my database, or whatever you want to call it, I honestly had 15 friends that were realtors.
Wow.
Not my best friends, not my cousins, not my siblings or whatever, people that I, knew from going out and being young and friends of friends and whatever. So I reached out to all of them. I actually spoke to all of them and only spoke to like 2 managers of brokerages. Got their opinion, what they thought about me doing real estate, what they how they liked their brokerage, what was great about it, how they got started. And that was kind of my process of finding the right brokerage for me.
Mm-hmm. And where did you, not, you don't need to mention any name, where you had what, let me, this ties into the recruiting comment, because
Sure.
it all is connected. What was the basis of your decision? How did you go through the interview process when you talked to those leaders and ultimately choose? What happened with you? Now, you're coming from a legal background. The whole process was different than some others, but what was it that you liked or disliked, or what helped you make your decision?
Yeah, it was really 2 things. One was the environment. That was really important to me, and that still is probably the biggest thing to me today. Is some people call it culture, environment, the atmosphere. I get energy personally around others, so I will do better in an environment that I'm happy and I enjoy being around. Whether it's a physical space or the people or whatever it is. And really just, I think, the tools, the education. Because I knew that if I had at least access to what I felt I needed, I was going to make it regardless.
That's
so
correct.
it wasn't who the mentor was, or it wasn't like I guess a curriculum or some sort. But it was knowing that tools were being provided. So I wasn't just Googling random things. It was more applicable to real estate, California, Los Angeles, whatever it was. Because I had 15 friends in real estate, and they all actually offered to help me. But their way of helping was different. Most of them, hand over hand, was, yeah, just bring me a client and I'll show you what to do.
Oh, sure, right.
Yeah, because of course. And no offense, it's like no hard feelings. It's like, okay, I'm going to bring the client. We're going to end up sharing the commission. There's money involved. But how do I get that client? Like, how do I build the confidence and the knowledge in myself to go out there and start talking to people, especially someone that didn't have any sort of passion for real estate to begin with, So that was the difference, really much a lot of deciding factor. And all the people are great, obviously, that I call them friends or acquaintances or whatever. But to me, that also was like indicative of like the environment of the workplace that they were in.
But one of the things that you said that is, I think, profoundly impactful, and I was the same. When I started, I was in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I actually was recruited in Connecticut. You had to go to a classroom if you want to have your mind just die within you. Go and sit in a classroom mandatorily to get a license and go through classes. It was brutal. but I really liked the instructor. Not that she was a great instructor, I just liked her. And she approached me and she said, I really want you to talk to my broker. And so I went to that broker and I went to that brokerage because of the culture. They had been part of the town forever. He was one of the town fathers, you know, kind of, that's very New Englandy. And
Yeah.
but I like you said something very powerful. And this is something that I wish I could get everybody that I ever have recruited in my life to hear. I knew I was going to be successful no matter what, because what you did, Dan, is my expectation is that you got up and went to work, got up, suited up, went to work every day, did your job. Same thing for me. I had none of what you just described. This was 1986. I mean, we barely had computers, my friend. So the phone was attached to the wall, and the way you knew if there were new listings was because a runner was bringing all the new listings to each offices, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
But I got up and suited up and went to work every day because I've been in business in corporate America since I was in my mid-20s. So for me, it was just a natural, like, get up and go to work. This is my job now. This is what I have to do. And I was very successful, mostly because of that. Because,
Yeah.
but that's the challenge is they don't go to work.
Especially now with all these TV shows, you know?
I know it's easy peasy. So you made the decision and you were happy and you got what you needed. And what was your turnaround in terms of success and transactional kind of stuff?
So I actually didn't sell anything my first year, which people don't believe it, you know, because of, I guess, where I'm at today, right? And I'm very thankful for that. But I think that, so for one, I was part-time. I didn't have the financial means to quit my job. And so I was able to modify my hours in the law firm. I worked Monday through Thursday, long days, 10-hour days, whatever it was, or longer. I took Fridays off, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Fortunately, my company that I originally joined, they had, like, you know, classes and things on Fridays. So I was in the office. It was like, that was my day. I was in the office. I was taking a class. I was working on my database. I was working on my marketing. I was, you know, I'm a very, I'm the non-salesy salesperson, I call myself. So it's like, even though I figured my business was going to come from my sphere, I don't feel comfortable asking my sphere to work with me. It's to me, it feels like asking them for money. So I was doing whatever activities I was doing to promote myself. And in turn, my sphere was seeing what I did. But I also, you know, I'm a little bit of a know-it-all. So especially having that legal background, like, I would forget who the clients were because there's so many clients, right? But the moment I walked into a conference room, give me 30 seconds and I'll exactly explain what the client needs to do. And I wanted that confidence in myself in real estate, really to give me that boost to go out there and get business. And in hindsight, I really thought about this, you know, 3 years ago. I'm like, how stupid I was.
Mhm,
I was marketing to my sphere, my
mhm.
family, my friends, whatever. They knew at the time I was new to real estate. It wasn't like I was trying to, like, door knock or whatever it was. And, you know, oh, I'm the seasoned professional. Like, my people that I was marketing to knew I literally, you know, brand new. So they didn't expect me to know it all. But I in my head, my limiting belief was to know it all, you know. And
And
also,
I can't tell you, I remember having a student once when I was teaching for the company I was working for. I used to do a lot of that. And she was a nurse and she was so struggling with, I don't know anything about this. What do I do here? I said, yeah, you save lives for a living. Real estate isn't that. And
yeah.
I don't know that she hung in. I think she actually got out because she um, just could not handle not knowing what she thought she was supposed to know. And in my case, I didn't. And I think you and I talked about this once. I literally moved to Fairfield, Connecticut in November of 1985. And by I think August of 86, I had a real estate license.
Yeah.
I didn't have any relationships. I knew no one. The guy across the street was in real estate and has still to this day a very dear friend of mine, but I lived in that house for 13 years. I had no sphere. I had no connections. I knew no one other than the realtor that sold me my home and the guy across the street.
Yeah.
All I could do, I said, well, number one, I'm a business person. And in those days, in ancient history days, we had something called floor time and we had something called open
I get asked
houses.
about it all the time. I was like,
Yeah,
what is this?
it was, and I gotta
I
tell
thought
you,
it existed for a decade, you
it,
know?
it and it did because we didn't have the technology platforms we have today. I
Yeah,
had, I was, I was not a lawyer, but I could have been, and literally almost did go to law school, but I had a skill set to convert people. And so I was really good at open houses and really good at converting at floor time. But I
yeah,
also had to get known and I had to know the town. And I started volunteering. That's when I first got involved in organized real estate. That's when I was involved with the Chamber of Commerce. I was volunteering to help with it so I could begin to build my sphere of influence in not just personal relationships, but business to business stuff. And it was through that. I mean, I in my first 12 months, I made about $35,000, which in translation is about 85,000 today, which isn't bad.
right. That's pretty good.
But it was all because of converting the calls, you know.
Yeah,
It was, and we used to get these calls. Hey, I'm calling about the house on the corner and so and so. Oh, great. Tell me more stuff, you know. Tell me the price of this yellow house on, and you have to know how to talk to people.
for sure.
And I was very successful because of that. I had that skill, my dad's skill, and so I did very, very well. But I was launching, I was full time, I was in, and that's so the challenge was devoting. You were there and working on that Friday. You weren't working in the law firm, and
Correct.
so how did you have the transition plan of um, how long were you going to stay before you launched freely, or you just kind of was winging it?
So when I told the attorney I worked for, she owned the practice. I told her when I got my real estate license, and she was one of my best friends at the time. And it was funny because about year 8, working together, we both were like, we hate this. Like, we need to find something else to do, right? So when I did tell her I was even getting my real estate license, and when I told her I passed, she's like, amazing. She's like, I'm gonna get mine too, and we'll open a brokerage and you'll work for me. And I was like, no, you know. So to that, when I told her, I said, I love you, but I said I'm really doing this for me. And I said, obviously, I don't have any clients and I don't have the savings. So this is a letting you know, and I hope you're okay with it. And if you need to fire me, I understand. I said, but I'm not quitting anytime soon, you know? So she worked with me, and even our clients, divorcing clients, those were my first clients, right? So actually, when new agents usually they say, buyers are traditionally your first clients.
Yeah,
Mine ended up being sellers because of our divorce cases.
right.
But that also come with, okay, the wife is our client, the husband's okay with it, but then the husband has an attorney, and everything's adversarial when you have attorneys. And so then all of a sudden it was this big hoopla and whatever it was. And even my best friend, the one that was so upset with me that I was leaving law because he knew I was so good at it and I was going to be more successful at law. When he came around, he's like, I'm going to be your first client. But
Mhm.
he wasn't ready. It's like, and then you're working with first time buyers, and they want a deal, and they want a low ball, and they want to write offers, and you're learning to really handle the client. So 1 year going through, I didn't have any sales. I wasn't stressed for money because I still pretty much made the same. I didn't really lose any money working my behind off, of course.
Mhm.
But by year 1, and I've been talking about this actually a lot lately to new agents. Even though statistics are against you, I think that a lot of them, because they have misconceptions or whatever, they don't have the money. Even for me, when I started making money, it was still not comfortable getting rid of that paycheck, that regular paycheck. But I think if people stick with it a little longer, there's enough business for everyone out here to
Absolutely,
be
absolutely,
successful.
absolutely. So when did you first become a leader? What happened? How did that trend? Because I want us. So I'm loving this, by the way, and this is fitting right in my wheelhouse with everything I'm trying to do with everybody I'm doing videos for. But you're in the real estate industry, and then because I know what happened with me, I was recruited by an independent multi-office company. They knew I had been successful. They knew because I was volunteering, so I began to have some levels of name recognition, if you will, and they recruited me to go into management, which frankly was the logical thing for me because I had been running companies since I was 24 years old. So it was like,
Yeah,
okay, sure, let's just
that
do
was
this one
easy
now instead of that one.
for
And so
sure.
that was a little over 2 years. So what about you? What happened?
Sure. So year two started selling. I did about 5 million my second
Oh,
year
you?
by myself. And then I met this guy named Harma. And I had heard about Harma for 2 years as a new agent, this name, this person, but I never met him. He wasn't part of our office. He was part of another office in our same company. And there's something that always came about him, you know, when people talked about him, that they loved him, that he threw great parties, that he cared about
Oh,
people, that he was
great
successful.
parties, my kind of guy. Where's my
You
guy?
know, so it was very much back to that or that energy. And about 2 years in, I met him randomly at a coffee shop because I was walking to get coffee with my friend and that worked with me. And I hear her voice pitch up, Harma, like it was this really like excitement in her voice. And I look over and there's this Harma I had heard of. No, I met him just there at coffee briefly. We became friends through Facebook and whatever, social media. I continued to sell and be with my office. But because of, I guess, my who I am, so I wanted to get involved. So the office actually looked at me, you know, starting to do sales, starting to do higher end price point. So I think about 2.5 years, my highest sale, it was 7.5 million that I ended up double ending, a house in Beverly Hills that I was not supposed to get that listing. So that, you know, third year in the business, I was at 25 million as an individual agent in the top 10 in, you know, my Hollywood Hills skyrise office with the view of Beverly Hills and all the glitz and glamour, right?
I know it well.
That didn't, of course, the view, I loved the view and I loved the location. But the people weren't my people anymore. The agents were my people. The leadership had changed. You know, I'm still friends with the leader. So it wasn't personal. It was, I think, more of a style where I want, again, people to get together. So when you're looking at having like mixers and masterminds and really that environment, it didn't have it. And me as an individual agent, you know, took the initiative to try to bring that to our office. And I felt like I wasn't supported in that.
You know, I have you're tapping into all of my things. So that's also culture that you have a culture within the organization that thrives on interpersonal connectivity.
Yeah,
And what I have learned in my lifetime, for the most part, is that agents don't leave companies because of money necessarily.
yeah,
They leave because of leadership changes, cultural changes, not removing poison from the office, that kind of thing will
sure.
get somebody. I don't want to be around that. I don't want my reputation, whatever. I will share with you, we had parties all the time. When I was, my largest office was 250. I know yours was larger, but it was killer. So
Yeah, and you know what? This I say this all the time. This is a this now I forget, right? This business is all about relationships, and
correct.
those relationships start within our own office.
Absolutely. I remember one Halloween, I was doing a sales meeting and I went as Supergirl. And I actually very rarely had guest speakers, but this particular time I was bringing him in because it was a program I wanted him to talk about. Told him we were having a Halloween party, and he came as a pirate. It was perfect. We had the whole office. We had a blast. We used to do potlucks. You know, all of that is culture. I used to do in one of the first offices in California I managed. At the end of every month, we had a like bag of potato chips. Open the bag, no plates. Have a bottle of wine, have a beer, and talk about how we did the prior month. And that's all culture. So that's that was your impetus to move on then.
Yeah, and when it was kind of finally smack in my face, this isn't the place for me. That's who I reached out to was Harma because that's what I knew of him, and he had had a reputation of that. And the year that I knew him in between, or got to know him a little bit, barely, really. So when I made that decision to him, I went to him and I said, "I want to be with you. Like, I don't care which, he had 3 offices. They were all in the Valley. I don't know how far this goes, but the San Fernando Valley, when I was on the West Side in West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. So my business is my sphere. I don't care. They don't care where I sell. I don't care where I sell. I care about who I'm with and the environment. So I told Parma, I said, pick an office that you want me to be in if you'll have me, and I'll gladly go to whatever office you need me in. And he turned to me and he said, I have other plans for you.
Oh,
And so I always say that he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that's when he proposed me being one of his managers. And I looked at him and just in his like sarcastic, witty, charming, whatever way you want to call it, I just thought he was kidding. Like, I'm 3 years in the business. What do I know about real estate, let alone managing a brokerage? And, he said, just let's see how it goes. And we met. And when we met, I told him, I think A, B, and C. Like, I need to do A, B, and C. And he's like, I already did that for you. Like, I already have it set up and it's already ready. And he told me, like, I want you, the next 30 days to do 1, 2, 3. I said, I actually already did that. Like, it was really weird. We were like in sync. I can't even cross however you do it, from that moment on. And it just felt right. And what he told me might be like 2 years and learning to be a manager or whatever, was about 2 months. And we both knew that I wanted the job and he wanted me in the job.
mhm. And
Um,
so when then after that, which I love this story. When then after that did you what part of when did recruiting become a thing for you, or how did that evolve, if you will? Because if you're a baby manager, most baby managers don't understand that's part of their jobs. My tack was a different one. When I first started managing, I started doing CRB courses, which
yeah.
are brokerage management courses, because if I was going to do this, I wanted to be the best I could be. And gratefully I did well. But when did the recruiting piece kind of click, or was that one of the 1, 2, 3s for Harma that you already started doing?
Oh yeah, we kind of briefly mentioned it was Keller Williams. I mean, that's the job. It is recruiting. It's all the other stuff is really stuff that Harma wanted me to do. The management, the culture, the environment, the mixers, the events, the awards, the socializing. That's nothing in the job description of a team leader.
No, it is not.
So the job in which you're judged on where your level of success is who you bring in the door, or how many people you bring in the door. Let's say that, I think.
Mhm.
So that was very clear from day one. And he, as an owner or whatever, went through many team leaders. He had 3 offices. So, there's a long list of people. And even when I got into the role, there were several of my top producers that just wouldn't meet with me. They said, well, how long are you going to be here for? Why do I want to meet with you? Like, that's
Oh,
not across the board. I mean, Harma really did me right in the fact that there was this really excitement for me coming in. I was a top producing agent from the West, or what you call it, that's subjective in itself, right? But on the West Side, higher price point coming to the Valley, I could really help our agents grow their business. That was how it was pitched. And so because I really enjoyed being in the office with people, and I kept my business, which was another thing that was happening at the same time. So not only am I learning to become a manager on one side, but on the other side, I'm learning how to hire an assistant and replace me and build a team. So both were like happening simultaneously. So yeah, for the first year, I was running around with my head cut off like a chicken.
that's exciting though. So
Recruiting started day one.
day one, yeah. Well, that's what it should have. Yeah, and I am familiar with the Keller, as I had shared with you. I did. I was actually had a blast for that 2-year period of time, because I wrote my own. I said, "This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm not doing." And I think the first year I was with them, because I said, I'm not taking a salary. You're paying me nothing. You're going to,
Yeah.
my split remains the same. I will only get paid from productivity coaching. And I made close to $100,000 just productivity coaching, because I was teaching. They didn't know. So whatever. So talk about recruiting. When you're in the process of recruiting, did you have a recruiting plan? In other words, how many people do I need to add? Because this is one of my mantras, is that your recruits are directly related to the bottom line income of the company. And I know the Keller capping
For
thing
sure.
and all that stuff. So I know when I was in that recruiting place, in fact, to give you an example, when I took over that largest office I mentioned, there was 168,000 in profit. This was December of 2001, and there were about 125, 130 people in the office, most of whom, and I said, well, that kind of annoyed me because I'm a big fan of profit. And so I just started recruiting, and I said, I've got to just recruit, and I've got to focus on newer middle level agents because you make more money on them.
For
And so I
sure.
was hiring 5 to 8 people a month, and I took it within 2 years to just under $1 million in profit through that recruiting program. So share with me, kind of what you were doing, what you were looking for, what your recruiting processes were, all of those things all at once.
Yeah, I know. I was really fortunate, and at least, you know, the office that I had started with, was a pretty well-oiled machine. It was, probably one of the most successful offices in the region. And from where I was at, it was like night and day, and I was like, wow, But once you get in there, then you kind of start seeing where the little cracks or the hidden, the dead bodies are,
The
right?
dead bodies, for sure. That's it.
So, and of course, I had someone like Karma to coach me, and he really spent a lot of time with me on that. So there was the operations were already happening, the recruiting emails, the new licensee brochures, the reputation of the office itself, and the people that were there was there. But even in that first year, no office in the Valley had ever hit $1 billion in sales volume, and we achieved that together. So I officially started, I think it was like July 1st was like my launch date. And obviously it helped. I think by September, so 2 months later, I had 25 people join the company, including my first, like what you would call a capper, if you're familiar with the capping model.
I am.
But it was more about, again, environment. So one of our top agents at the time, his name was Dennis Chernoff, and very well known. He came to me one day and he said, hey, I want to teach a class. And my instincts or whatever told me, and I loved him. He's such an amazing agent, and he gave me so much respect from day one. Just very kind. And when he came to me with this class, that's this light bulb intuition or whatever was like, what does he want a class for? Like, he's so successful. Like, I know he's a nice guy and he's incredible, but I was like, in my head, I was like thinking, he wants to build his team, so he's looking for the talent within the office. And I said, well, if he's going to do this for me, I said, let me market that to
Everybody else.
to everybody else. And I think I had like 7 really big producing agents come to the class, because everybody's going to learn something from Dennis Chernoff. He's incredible, and that's how I got my first like major agent, was through that. So it was back to what I knew and what I was comfortable with, because I wasn't comfortable getting on this thing. I didn't want to do it for my own friends and family, calling them for business. And thankfully, at the beginning, Harma didn't push this calling down the roster, cold calling for appointments. It was really working on the environment that I had, building the relationships within our agents. So for that first 6 months, I think I had coffee at 8 a.m. I had tea at 10 o'clock. I had lunch with someone. I couldn't have another like whole on coffee. So come like 2 o'clock, I was having an affogato, with a little bit of ice cream or something, just literally getting to meet my agents. And then of course, meeting the people that they were referring me to. So working with that. So the environment, the agents, that was my strategy.
And I have to tell you, I had a similar thing. Where I see new leaders in real estate brokerages make massive mistakes is they come in thinking they have to make massive changes. And that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. You come in with a feather. You
Oh
get to
yeah.
know who they are. Get to know, like what you just described. You get to know them as individuals. And in the process of doing that, you get to learn, how can I best help them? Who are they? How can I, as that leader, help facilitate their increase in production? And I did the exact same thing. I think I was in my office in that first year. I don't know. I don't remember. It was rare. And that was what turned the corner, because then leadership, people want to, I've written a lot of courses, and one of the courses I found this proverb years ago that if you think you're a leader and start taking a walk and no one's behind you, you're just taking a walk. And
Yeah.
and what you just described is leadership, getting to know the people you're working with, having them realize you're there to support them and be there for them. My
Yeah.
agent population was almost the best recruiting I had. The other
Yeah.
things that I did, and I'm curious if you did this, I would go on whatever you call it in the valley, broker caravan.
Yeah. Broken
I would
caravan.
I would go down. Everybody calls it something different. I didn't know if the valley had its own name. So,
Yeah.
so I literally would go
Called
down.
the broker caravan.
I literally went down the, I would twice a month. It wasn't every single week because I didn't want it to be too terribly obvious.
Sure.
I was going out, and I did this even starting in Connecticut. I would go out and go to broker caravans, meet the people to the agent population I was looking for,
Yeah.
and I was the only manager doing it. Another thing I would do, I would look at Sunday open house publications, and if there was an agent I was going after, I went to that open house for that agent.
Yeah.
By the way, forgive the barking.
Totally did the same. When I first started, it was kind of this group caravan, which is fun, but then it's also, it was a little clashing with my vibe a little bit too.
Yeah.
But it was more so of, it was more so of, I guess, it's the people that would not take my meeting.
Ah,
So I strategically looked at like, okay, or maybe the people that were, you talk to people and it's, I'll meet with you, or, oh, call me back in 6 months, or call me back whenever. And those are the people that I was looking for. So it wasn't just who was having an open house or brokers open in my area, but it was now getting in front of them and not even asking them for a meeting,
yep.
they know who
Or
you are, you know,
or the other,
hiding from you, whatever it is.
exactly. And the other thing and actually teach this in one of the courses that I wrote, is that understand the right agents that fit your culture. It could take, I had one, the longest was a year to get that person.
Yeah.
But it was the drip system. It was consistently, and hey, how are you? Jenny, I'm happy. I don't want to talk to you. I said, I don't want to talk to you. I just want to have a cup of coffee. Want to meet me for coffee at 10? How's the family? When you get to know them, and it isn't about the recruiting piece, it's about the relationship.
For sure.
And in those days, I got recruited frequently, and I had one particular company. It was company that was coming after me all the time. And this was a fascinating comment that was made, Dan, that kind of really sits right into what we're talking about. I said, "Why are you? I love you, but why are you calling me? I'm happy." And
Yeah,
he said, "Maybe one day you're not going to be happy, and I want to be the person you think about."
for sure. It's like
Brilliant.
having your backup lender or your
Yes.
backup.
And quite frankly, when I became unhappy, he was the guy I did call, and that's where I ended up working.
Yeah. And not only that, like I think to add to that, I don't know. Now I've done this for 6 years.
Mhm.
I probably have more advocates
Yes.
that are respected,
Right.
successful in other companies, and maybe they're not making a change for whatever reason,
Right.
but they're sending me people constantly because they don't even want to direct people to their own company.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like, hey, check out my company, but then as an alternative, check out Dan,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if I were going to go anywhere, it would be with Dan.
Yeah.
It's like it's building those relationships.
I had somebody call me out of nowhere, however long ago, said, I was referred to you by this person, and she told me you were the person I needed to talk to. I'm looking for somebody to lead one of my offices. Of course, I didn't want to do that job, but this woman didn't even work with me. She was never in any of my offices. She just knew who I was because of all the things we just talked about: the networking, the visibility, the parties, the things, the da da da, all that stuff. She knew who I was and recommended me to this man.
Yeah.
So that's how it's all built. So when you look at newbies, do you have an interview process that you go through? Because I want to talk about that too. Do you? I'm going to ask a hard question, and I know you're now Equity Union. You're not
Your
that
equity union, correct?
anymore, right?
Yes.
So do you recruit differently now?
Um, yes. So I think we set up a system. So we still follow our system. It works. And actually, we've updated like even our marketing. So one thing that I do get constantly is compliments of the marketing material that we send out. It's just It's cleaner, it's more modern, it's sleek. I think it's classier. I've seen what everybody else sends out. So it's, again, knowing what your competition is, even in the new agent game, right? And what you're providing. And even that, like one thing that I learned from Harma, and back to really quick about starting, is, don't change anything. Right? It's like don't disrupt, don't
Right,
disrupt, and get
right,
to know everybody and tweak the changes here and there. So even
right.
when I saw this amazing office and then I started seeing the little cracks in there, I wasn't like a crazy person just, going in there
Exactly.
and putting everything under construction. It was like, okay, let's tweak this here, let's tweak that there. So even in the recruiting material, as I'm in meetings, I'm seeing what people are gravitating to, what they're not interested in, when their eyes light up, what maybe we can do better or change. We're always looking for what we can do better. So in Harma's opinion, like nobody's ever a 10,
No,
you
no.
know, maybe you're an 8. I don't even know if you're a 9, even, and sometimes that hurts, but I love them. It's okay. I get it, because there's always room for improvement.
Yes.
With the new licensees, it is, I think we've gotten more restrictive on who we do bring on.
Mhm.
But I have a soft spot, and it's for new agents. I'm only 10 years in this business. I remember how I was. I just told you my story. It's not something that I've forgotten. Being part-time, having a full-time career, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone that's passionate,
Mhm.
someone that's engaged, someone that's professional, someone that has a plan. That's not just like, oh, this is being on a show. Even if you do have a full-time job like I do, what is the strategy of getting out of that full-time job?
Right.
What our program is, our mentorship program, our training program, that's all mapped out and laid out. I get more compliments on that because it's so structured that anybody can look at it and follow it.
Mhm.
Uh, and so it's like knowing this is what we do and this is how we run our program. How are you able to make it work in your schedule? And it is your schedule. You're not clocking in and clocking out. You're an independent contractor, and I'm not going to be the one that's seeing where you are every day. So it's what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And that's my recruit appointment.
Right, that's the same thing I went through. I actually had a script, that I took like 4 or 5 different scripts and created one, and I used that with every recruit. It was just understand, I just don't wanna screw anything up, I don't wanna miss anything, so I have a script, do you mind if I use that? And I had a list of questions that I asked, and those questions, usually within the first 4 or 5 questions, I knew whether or not they were the right fit.
Yeah.
And I usually started the conversation with, please understand, I don't hire everybody I meet. One of the things that I love to say is that I love houses and I love people, and that's why I'm going into real estate. And my response was universally, well, in about 6 months, you're not going to like either one of those things. But
I
all of
love
the same things, they had to have a
that.
purpose. The independent contractor piece, means if you don't have a purpose and a passion and a plan and a reason and all those things, it's really hard. It's really hard. So let me ask you that tough question that I love asking everybody.
Sure.
What about termination? Did you terminate people? Did you let them stay forever? And
I
tell
do.
me.
I definitely terminate people. It's not fun, obviously. This is someone's career. This is someone's livelihood. I don't obviously do it for fun or anything like that. But
I
yeah,
would
I mean,
hope not.
I know, right? Totally. I look at it. So for example, I actually had a phone call with someone the other day, and this particular agent, she never really was able to kind of transition her career out of her current career. We did end up, a while back moving her more into a referral status. But she kind of went missing in action, and 1 month, 2 months, 3 months goes by, and we had to let her go.
Mhm.
And 2 months later, now she's blowing up my phone and trying to ask me X, Y, and Z. And I told her, I said, I'm responsible for you. Your license is under our brokerage. It's not me. I'm not the broker of record, but I take responsibility for that broker of record and her license. So if you're not communicating with our staff, how do I know what you're doing out there? And at the end of the day, it's our brokerage and our license. So I said, unfortunately, you are not hireable with
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
Rehire. So it's usually something like that. Again, the culture is very important to me, and I think I'm a very good judge of character. But I do give people the chance or the benefit of the doubt. And so it's honesty, it's professionalism, and if you know if constantly over and over and over again someone's saying you're, you know, a whatever word you want to put in there, you're a whatever word you want to put in there,
Mhm.
you know. So I got to see how that reflects on our company, and we're not all a match, and that's okay. There's plenty
Yeah,
of businesses and other brokerages out there. We're just not a fit.
right, right, right. And that's what I would say to, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't, it just means that you're not a fit for this place. And
Yeah.
that I had a very structured, and I didn't create it, I just enhanced it. Very structured mentor program wherein I basically told every recruit that was a brand newbie that my expectation is that they were going to close 2 to 3 transactions within 6 months, or we were probably going to part ways.
I like it, right?
It worked, and it
Yeah.
worked, and it was really 3. But what would happen, and I did this in the interview before we agreed to work together. So they already knew what the expectation was, and I basically said, if you do what we ask you to do and you follow a procedure and you do blah, 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 guess what? You'll make money and it'll be great. But if you don't do any of those things, not my responsibility, and we're probably going to part ways. So I literally set it up that way from the beginning. So that when it came, I remember I had one, my office was open. Gal walked by, Jenny, 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 don't even remember her name. What's the matter? And she said, I've got 2 and I'm real close on the 3rd one and it's a month away. Am I going to be okay? I said, you're going to be great. Just keep doing what you're
Yeah,
doing. And that was the purpose for what I did.
I
Uh,
like it.
and it also meant that the rest of the team, no matter their production level, knew that's what we did, and therefore knew that. Then what ended up happening is we became known as the training office, and people would say, go work for Ginny, and then when you got trained, come work for me.
Yeah,
But then they didn't leave, which was
I
perfect.
hear you.
Well,
I, you
this
know,
has this has been so awesome. I want us to finish up with one primary question. You're in leadership, you're doing a great job, you have a great reputation. I felt who you were from the moment I talked to you that first time. I got to talk to Harma once. I need to meet him in person. But um, what 1 or 2 primary things would you say to anybody watching this, either as a leader or to that agent? What kind of final things might you want to share?
just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I always say just have fun with it. There's so much business out there, and really it's life is too short.
Yeah.
So give it your all, like look for the support that you have. Um, if it's not the right fit, make the change you need to make. Fortunately, we don't lose too many people.
Mhm.
Knock on wood here.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's part of, looking for that improvement all the time, improvement in ourselves. We're not perfect.
Mhm.
What I try to do as a manager is really understand my agents and their business and how do we support that there. So, as an agent or whoever's looking at watching this, it's what is important and what's valuable to you and how do you find it? And once you find it, go for it.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, that's
Yeah,
it.
no, that's great. And I would only tag on to that I think our conversation talked about those things that are important to a brokerage today. And that is, you got to recruit and you got to have a culture that supports your team. You have to be in touch with them. You have to get to know them. You have to be a participant in their lives. And when you do that well, success happens. I agree with you. And I'm very grateful for the years that I was successful in that role. But I knew you and I pretty much did almost the same stuff. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's it's if you create that environment, people don't want to leave you.
that's correct. And very rarely did I lose people. I have that. I'm very proud of that too. Very rarely did people leave me because they wanted to be a part of it for whatever purpose or reason that they were getting from the office, and from me, and that's hugely important. So Well, my friend Dan, it's been delightful chatting with you. It's good to
Thank you,
see
Jenny.
you. If I
You
ever get to
too.
the valley, by the way, I used to live in the West Side back in the day, in the early '80s. I lived I actually worked in Century City,
Nice.
in the towers. I worked in the entertainment industry back in 100,000 years ago. And it's so changed now. It's so different from back in when I was living there. Santa Monica Boulevard was actually a street you could drive on and kind of get someplace.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen like historical pictures with like a little trolley and
That
things.
wasn't that bad.
Now that's very walkable.
That's even longer ago than me. So, but it's been delightful. Thank you so much for
You
you
too,
taking
Jenny.
your time,
Thank you.
and
My pleasure.
I appreciate you so very much. And please give my regards to Harma. I'm glad he called me that one day and that I got to meet you. So,
You too.
nothing but continued success to you moving forward. And I hope I get to see you again sometime very soon.
Hopefully soon. Thank you, Jenny. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Bye. You too. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was fascinating to hear some of his history and how did he get into real estate and what did he do and how did he then become a successful leader, manager, team leader, et cetera. And frankly, all of that stuff is what you need to be doing when you want to be a successful real estate broker, manager, or agent. It was just really, really interesting stuff for me personally. And as I suspected, there is a correlation between the two of us and our career paths because a lot of the things he does or is doing now, I did when I was in leadership myself. And so I just think he's an awesome guy, and I'm sure he'd be happy to chat with you. Have any questions for him, or you can reach out to me. Please subscribe. I will be continuing to do more things along these lines. I'm excited about some of the upcoming videos I am working on, have been working on. And so I'll see you again very, very soon. Please subscribe. See you soon.